sustenance and destruction of manifested
of the creation, sustenance, destruction of manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is she only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji,
the original living being.
the original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into
As one is
illusion.
bewildered by the illusory representation
As one is bewildered by the illusory
of water seen
representation
on fire or land seen on water.
of water seen to fire, land seen water.
Only because of him do the material universes,
Only because of him do the material universes,
temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature,
temporarily manifested by the reaction to the three modes of nature,
appear factual, although they're unreal.
appear factual, although they are
I
unreal.
therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna,
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord
who is
Shri Krishna,
eternally existent in the transcendental
who is
abode,
eternally existent in transcendental abode,
which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
which is forever free from the illusory representation of
I
material world.
meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
Dharma projita kaitra
Dharma prajita kaitavutta
Paramo nirmatsaranam satam
Paramo nirmasaranam
Vedyam vastavam atra vastu
Vedyam vastavam astravastu
Shivadam tapatrayon moon
Shivadam taputrayam
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni
Kim va parir Ishvaraha
Kim va paririshvaraha
Sadyo hridi avurjate tra
Sadyo rudya varidya titra
Kriti bihi sususubhistakshana.
Kritivihi shushu vistakhyana.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth,
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
which is understandable by those of us who are fully pure in the heart.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth, the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold mysteries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold miseries.
This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity,
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by great sage Vyasadeva's maturity
is sufficient in itself for God realization.
is sufficient itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
With the need of the other scriptures.
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one attentively, submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
by this culture of knowledge,
by this culture of
the
knowledge,
Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpataro galitam phalam,
Nigama kalpataro galitam phalam,
sukhamukad amrita dravya samyatam,
Sukhamukharam ritadrava
pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam,
Pibata Bhagavatam rasam
muhur ahoraskabu vibhavukaha.
Mura Gora Sikabu Vibhavuka.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam,
O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad
the
Bhagavatam,
mature fruit of the desired true Vedic literatures.
the mature fruit, the desired tree with Vedic literature.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Shukadev Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including the
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna,
Shrivatam Swakata Krishna,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Hridyantaksto hi Bhadrani,
Vidyantasto Hiyabhadani,
Vidunati Suhitsatam.
Vidunati Suritsatam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from the Vedic
or to
literature,
hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from it directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
is itself righteous activity.
it is self-righteous
And
activity.
for one who hears about Krishna,
For one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's heart,
acts as a best wishing friend,
acts as his best wishing
and
friend,
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
purifies the body, is constantly engaged in hearing to him.
Nastapresu Bhadresu
Nasta Prayeshwa Bhadrishu
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Bhagavati Uttamasloke
Bhagavati
Bhaktir
Uttamasloke
Bhavati Naistaki.
Bhakti Bhagavati Naistaki.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, the devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental
As he hears
knowledge.
more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the
and
devotees,
from the devotees,
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in devotional service to the Lord.
Nastapresu Tadarajastamo bhava
Tadarajastamo bhava
Kamalobhadayaschaye
Kamalobhadayaschaye
Cheta itaranabidam
Cheta itaranabidam
Stitvam Sattve Prasidhati.
Stitvam Sarve Prasidhati.
By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional
one
service,
becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
and as material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasanna manaso
Evam prasanna manasa
Bhagavad Bhakti Yogataha
Bhagavat Bhakti Yoga
Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam
Bhagavat Tattva Jnanam
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When these impurities are wiped away,
the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
the candidate remains steady in his position of pure
becomes
goodness,
enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by devotional
and understands
service,
the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate Hridaya Grantis
Vidyate Hridaya Grantis
Chidyante Sarva Samsaya
Chidyante Sarva Samshaya
Chiyante Chasya Karmani
Chidyante Chasa Karmani
Yusta Evat Manishwari.
Yuta Evarmaneshwari.
Thus Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
Thus the Bhakti Yoga severs the hardness of material affection
and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
and enables us to come at once to the stage of samshayam samagram,
understanding of the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead.
understanding the supreme absolute true personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness,
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotees in Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Srimad Bhagvatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3, verse number 21. Bhara param pata kiritajustam
Hara parampata kirijajustam
abuttamangam nanamen mukundam
apyuttamangam nanamem mukundam
savo karuno kurute saparyam
savo karuno kurute saparyam
Harivilas Kanchana
Harivilas Kanchana Kankanuva.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The upper portion of the body, though crowned with a silk turban, is only a heavy burden if not bowed down before the personality of Godhead, who can award mukti, freedom. And the hands, though decorated with glittering bangles, are like those of a dead man if not engaged in the service of the personality of Godhead, Hari. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. As stated herein before, there are three kinds of devotees of the Lord. The first class devotee does not at all see anyone who is not in the service of the Lord. So in other words, by using the double negative, they cancel each other. It means that the first class devotee sees everyone as the servant of the Lord. But the second class devotee makes distinctions between devotees and non-devotees. The second class devotees are therefore meant for preaching work. And as referred to in the above verse, they must loudly preach the glories of the Lord. The second class devotee accepts disciples from the section of third class devotees or non-devotees. Sometimes the first class devotee also comes down to the category of the second class devotee for preaching work. But the common man, who is expected to become at least a third class devotee, is advised herein to visit the temple of the Lord and bow down before the deity, even though he may be a very rich man or even a king with a silk turban or crown. The Lord is the Lord of everyone, including the great kings and emperors, and men who are rich in the estimation of mundane people must therefore make it a point to visit the temple of the Lord, Sri Krishna, and regularly bow down before the deity. The Lord in the temple, in the worshipable form, is never to be considered to be made of stone or wood, for the Lord in his Archa incarnation as the deity in the temple shows immense favor to the fallen souls by his auspicious presence. By the hearing process, as mentioned herein before, this realization of the presence of the Lord in the temple is made possible. As such, the first process in the routine work of devotional service, hearing, is the essential point. Hearing by all classes of devotees from the authentic sources, like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagvatam, is essential. The common man, who is puffed up with his material position and does not bow down before the deity of the Lord in the temple, or who defies temple worship without any knowledge of the science, must know that his so-called turban or crown will only succeed in further drowning him in the water of the ocean of material existence. A drowning man with a heavy weight on his head is sure to go down more swiftly than those who have no heavy weight. A foolish, puffed-up man defies the science of God and says that God has no meaning for him. But when he is in the grip of God's law and is caught by some disease like cerebral thrombosis, that godless man sinks into the ocean of nations by the weight of his material acquisition. Advancement of material science without God consciousness is a heavy load on the head of human society, and so one must take heed of this great warning. The common man, if he has no time to worship the Lord, may at least engage his hands for a few seconds in washing or sweeping the Lord's temple. Maharaja Prataparudra, the greatly powerful king of Orissa, was always very busy with heavy state responsibilities. Yet he made it a point to sweep the temple of Lord Jagannath at Puri once a year during the festival of the Lord. The idea is that however important a man one may be, he must accept the supremacy of the Supreme Lord. This God consciousness will help a man even in his material prosperity. Maharaj Prataparudra's subordination before Lord Jagannath made him a powerful king, so much so that even the great Patan in his time could not enter into Orissa on account of the powerful Maharaja Prataparudra. And at last, Maharaj Prataparudra was graced by Lord Sri Chaitanya on the very grounds of his acquaintance of subordination to the Lord of the universe. So even though a rich man's wife has glittering bangles made of gold in her hands, she must engage herself in rendering service to the Lord. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The upper portion of the body, though crowned with a silk turban, is only a heavy burden if not bowed down before the personality of Godhead, who can award mukti, freedom. And the hands, though decorated with glittering bangles, are like those of a dead man if not engaged in the service of the personality of Godhead, Hari. So, in this purport, Prabhupada makes a very strong statement about hearing regularly. In fact, every day we say we're talking about the importance of hearing. As it says in Srimad Bhagvatam 1.2.16, Shushusoho Shadadanyasya Vasudeva Katarichi San Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punyatirtani Sevana. The first word says Shushusoho, one who is engaged in hearing, Shadadanyasya, with care and attention. It also implies faith. Vasudeva Kataruchi. What's the subject? It's the nectarine pastimes of Vasudeva or Krishna. Shanmahat Sevaya Vipra, by service rendered to pure devotees. Also, Punyatirtha Nisevanat, then a person is cleansed of all vice by such service. by hearing and offering service to devotees. So, O twice-born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. In the purport, Prabhupada says, the conditioned life of a living being is caused by his revolting against the Lord. There are men called devas, or godly living beings, and there are men called asuras, or demons, who are against the authority of the Supreme Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, 16th chapter, a vivid description of the asuras is given, in which it is said that the asuras are put into lower and lower states of ignorance, life after life, and so sink to the lower animal forms and have no information of the absolute truth. That obviously is the worst thing that can happen to a person. After coming to the human form of life, after having a chance to become liberated from the cycle of birth and death, if one wastes their life uselessly hearing nonsense, eating nonsense or rubbish things, engaging in all kinds of illicit activities, then they can go down to the lowest levels of species and just suffer life after life before they can come back again to the human form of life after going through millions of births and deaths. So it's a horrible thing to miss the opportunity in the human body to go back to Godhead. And Prabhupada says that a vivid description of the asuras is given, in which it is said that the asuras are put into lower and lower states of ignorance, life after life, and so sink to the lowest animal forms and have no information of the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. These asuras are gradually rectified to God consciousness by the mercy of the Lord's liberated servitors in different countries according to the supreme will. Such devotees of God are very confidential associates of the Lord, and when they come to save human society from the dangers of godlessness, they are known as the powerful incarnations of the Lord, as sons of the Lord, as servants of the Lord, or as associates of the Lord. But none of them falsely claim to be God themselves. This is a blasphemy declared by the asuras, and the demoniac followers of such asuras also accept pretenders as God or as incarnation. In the revealed scriptures, there is definite information of the incarnation of God. No one should be accepted as God or an incarnation of God unless he is confirmed by the revealed scriptures. The servants of God are to be respected as God by the devotees who actually want to go back to Godhead. Such servants of God are called Mahatmas or Tirthas, and they preach according to their particular time and place. The servants of God urge people to become devotees of the Lord. They never tolerate being called God. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is God himself, according to the indication of the revealed scriptures, but he played the part of a devotee. People who knew him to be God addressed him as God, but he used to block his ears with his hands and chant the name of Lord Vishnu. He strongly protested against being called God, although undoubtedly he was God himself. The Lord behaves so to warn us against unscrupulous men who take pleasure in being addressed as God. So, this hearing process is the most important thing, and then hearing and then repeating for becoming Krishna conscious. Simply book learning is not good enough. There's nothing wrong with book learning, but it's not sufficient in itself to liberate one from birth and death. There must be book learning, and there must be practical service. You transform all that book learning into practical service. Then the science of Krishna consciousness works. The servants of God come to propagate God consciousness, and intelligent people should cooperate with them in every respect. By serving the servant of God, one can please God more than by directly serving the Lord. The Lord is more pleased when he sees that his servants are properly respected. because such servants risk everything for the service of the Lord, and so are very dear to the Lord. The Lord declares in the Bhagavad Gita 18:69 that no one is dearer to him than one who risks everything to preach his glory. By serving the servants of the Lord, one gradually gets the quality of such servants, and thus one becomes qualified to hear the glories of the Lord. The eagerness to hear about God is the first qualification of a devotee eligible for entering the kingdom of God. It's really amazing purport 1:2:16, and it just supports completely what Prabhupada is saying. He says, by the hearing process, as mentioned herein before, that was the previous verse where it says, Nashrin Vata Karna Pute Narasya. One who has not listened to the messages about the prowess and marvelous acts of personality of Godhead, and has not sung or chanted loudly the worthy songs about the Lord, is to be considered to possess ear holes like the holes of snakes and a tongue like the tongue of a frog. So one must engage in the hearing process very, very seriously on a daily basis. Okay, so then another important point is made here, and that is right in the beginning where it says that one may have a crown of a silk turban, but it's only a heavy burden if one does not bow down before the personality of Godhead, who can award mukti or liberation. So that means that the deity worship is extremely important, also, as well as hearing regularly the Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, and also bowing down to the deity. In fact, there's a very important verse in the Padma Purana which says, Arche Vishnu Siladir Gurusu Naramatir Vaishnave Jati Budhir. A person who considers the deity of the Supreme Lord to be dead matter, made out of stone, wood, or metal, or the spiritual master, who is an eternal associate of the Supreme Lord, to be an ordinary man who is prone to die, or the Vaishnava to be coming from some caste, or the water which washes the feet of the pure devotee, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to be ordinary water, although such water has the potency to destroy all the evils of the age of Kali, or to consider the holy name of the Supreme Lord or mantras dedicated to him, which are able to destroy all sin, to be ordinary sounds, or to consider the Supreme Lord of all, Lord Vishnu, to be equal with other demigods, is considered to possess a hellish mentality. A person who thinks in this way is certainly a resident of hell. So we have this so-called famous poet, Kabir, and he said, Patar puje harimile, tome puju pahada, which means, if I can achieve Lord Hari by worshipping a stone, then I should worship a mountain, the biggest stone. Well, some people will say, oh, that's such wonderful poetry. But Kabir, who was a Sufi, in other words, a fake Muslim, the Muslims hate Sufis. They kill them. But Sufis are supposed to be... Sufis started by the Shaivites in India, and they sort of gravitated toward Islam because it became prominent. And but this is why the Muslims hate Sufis, because Sufis are basically worshippers of Lord Shiva. They believe in gurus, they believe in demigods, they believe in worship of the guru. And they, when the guru dies, they make a mausoleum people go and visit it, and they pray there and so forth. All this is against Islam, right? But they are considered to be Muslims, or at least they call themselves Muslims. Anyway, Kabir was a Sufi poet, but this statement that his man makes, Patar puje hari mile, to me puju pahada, actually is criticizing deity worship. Right. So, and the Sikhs have embraced Kabir. They put him in their Granth Sahib, their holy sacred book, his poetry. But actually, he's another nonsense. He was a false Muslim, and he writes, poetry. People sing his poetry like ghazals. And they sit around and they taste his poetry, and sometimes they cry hearing it. It's all a bunch of nonsense. The ghazals, the poetry, the poet, and but unfortunately, people like this are considered great people in India. Right? Did you study Kabir in school?
Yeah, there were some verses Kabir that.
Yeah. Huh?
Very popular.
Very popular, yeah. But first of all, the Muslims hate them, right? But the Hindus accept any nonsense, and they glorify it, and they make it part of their religion, like the Sikhs. So anyway, he was actually criticizing deity worship by this statement. So therefore, the being devoid of genuine devotional service is a great mistake. And this is explained also, it says, Shota vyadini rajendra nirnam santi sahasrasa apasyatam atmatatvam grihesu grihamedinam. Those persons who are materially engrossed, being blind to the knowledge of ultimate truth, have many subject matters for hearing in human society. In other words, they have many subject matters to hear, but it's nothing about Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagvatam. So they engage in hearing, news, stock quotes, politics, sports, all these different things, but they just avoid the Vedic scriptures. And then Nidraya Hirdaya Hirdiyate Naktam Vyavayena Chavai Vayu Diva Chartan Haya Rajan Kutumba Varanenava. The lifetime of such an envious householder that was spoken about in the previous verse, that is, materially engrossed, blind to knowledge of ultimate truth, and having many subject matters for hearing in human society. So such envious householders, their lifetime is passed at night either in sleeping or in sex indulgence, and in the daytime either in making money or maintaining family members. That's it. Nothing else. And they'll spend their whole life doing those things. Dehapatya kalatra disu atmasanyasu satsu api te sampramatanidanam pasyan apina pasyate. Persons devoid of Atma Tattva do not inquire into the problems of life, being too attached to the fallible soldiers like the body, children, wife, husband, etc. Experience, they still do not see their inevitable destruction. So, this is a description of people who don't engage in devotional service, who don't bow down to the deity, who don't even visit the temple. They're so engrossed in material life and engaged in all kinds of illicit activities, but yet they think they are advanced scientifically, philosophically, socially. They have money, they have big cars, they have this thing, that thing, but actually they're making a travesty of their human birth and not at all engaging in the purpose of life. So therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur also says, Eho to eka kalir chila, mata neda kapni para, tilaka nake galaya mala, sahaja bhajana karchina mamu, sangilo ye parira bala. Here is an agent of Kali. He has his head shaved and dressed himself like a Vaishnava renunciate. He is wearing tilaka and neck beads and worshipping Lord Krishna, but his interest is actually taking another man's wife. Well, this is a fact. These are called Kali Chelas. They're dressed like devotees, they chant Hare Krishna, they worship the deity, but they're thinking about taking another man's wife. So this is like the most abominable thing. We've had this in ISKCON also, people like that. And they're all over India. They're sadhus or incarnations of God or whatever. But yet their desires are so low class and abominable that no decent person could even imagine that there's such people like that. It's so dangerous and destructive of the faith of people in Krishna consciousness. So there are so many verses that are descriptive of the demoniac class of people who refuse to worship Krishna or God. They make fun of Krishna and his pastimes and say all kinds of abusive things. They don't have faith in the Vedic scriptures. They don't like to hear Vedic knowledge, and they speak against it, in fact. So, therefore, Prabhupada explains in this purport today, a foolish, puffed-up man defies the science of God and says that God has no meaning for him. But when he is in the grip of God's law and is caught by some disease like cerebral thrombosis, that godless man sinks into the ocean of nescience or ignorance by the weight of his material acquisition. Yeah, the more money he has, the more he's sinking into hell. Advancement of material science without God consciousness is a heavy load on the head of human society, and so one must take heed of this great warning. What is this cerebral thrombosis? Well, it's a blood clot in the cerebral vein, which is in the head. And this vein drains the blood from the brain. But if the blood collects in this vein, it will eventually leak into the brain tissues and cause hemorrhaging or severe brain swelling. And it's extremely painful, extremely painful. In fact, there's one devotee right now in Vrindavan that has this cerebral thrombosis. And it's excruciating pain because the brain starts to swell, right? So swelling is the cause of all pain in the body. Imagine how terrible headache one would have by a swollen brain. So Prabhupada says, but when this puffed up man who defies the science of God and says that God has no meaning for him, but when he is in the grip of God's law and is caught by some disease like cerebral thrombosis, that godless man sinks into the ocean of ignorance by the weight of his material acquisition. Wow. I mean, Prabhupada is so powerful in speaking here. Advancement of material science without God consciousness, which is what's happening today, is a heavy load on the head of human society, and so one must take heed of this great warning. That means society is going in the wrong direction. It's very dangerous. It's causing the destruction of so many people. But of course, people don't want to hear about it. The common man, if he has no time to worship the Lord, may at least engage his hands for a few seconds in washing or sweeping the Lord's temple. Then he gives the example of Maharaj Prataparudra. The great powerful king of Orissa was always very busy with heavy state responsibility, yet he made it a point to sweep the temple of Lord Jagannatha at Puri once a year during the festival of the Lord. So, accepting the supremacy of the Lord, this is what should be taught to our children right from the beginning of life. Because if not, then they'll be misled by material education and eventually believe that there's no God, that we're in this world by accident, and therefore we have to take advantage of the temporary body that we have and use it for complete sense gratification. So whenever you read the true biography of famous people, it usually turns out that they were complete vishayis, sense gratifiers. And although their image in the movies or their image on television is that of, oh, such a wonderful person, like that one person, he was called the father, the ideal father of America.
Cosby.
Huh?
Cosby?
What?
Cosby?
Yeah. Bill Crosby, yeah. It turns out he was a complete rascal, a nonsense, giving drugs to women and taking advantage of them and all kinds of crazy things like that. And then other movie stars who in their persona in the films is like, oh, such a wonderful person, but actually very low-class, despicable people, demons, right? So when you read the true story of their life, you say, my God, how can these people even exist? And being so low class and engaging in such horrible activity, and giving and projecting a persona as an ideal person that people want to emulate, right? So, therefore, we should not waste our time with all these mundane, so-called great people. We should just keep our mind focused on Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, and be educated in the science of Krishna. Prabhupada, how many times does he mention this in his purport? About 4 or 5 times. He says, for example, he says, okay, so he says, the common man who is puffed up with his material position and does not bow down before the deity of the Lord in the temple, or who defies temple worship without any knowledge of the science, must know that his so-called turban or crown will only succeed in further drowning him in the water of the ocean of material existence. So he's saying knowledge of the science. What science is he talking about? The science of Krishna, right? So anything about Krishna is actually scientific because it's universally true and predictable and consistent. And Prabhupada says also, as such, the first process in the routine work of devotional service, hearing, is the essential point. Hearing by all classes of devotees from the authentic sources like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam is essential. So, and then it says, a foolish puffed up man defies the science of God and says that God has no meaning for him. So, many times Prabhupada is saying the science of God. And just like we repeat every day also, we say in the prayers we say, therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. So, what does it mean by science? Look up the word science. What's it say?
It says intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment.
Systematic what?
Systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment.
Of physical and natural world. Well, no mention of God or the spirituality or anything. That's not the real meaning of science. Is there a secondary meaning?
A systematically organized body of knowledge on a particular subject.
There you go. That's what Krishna is, the science of Krishna is. It's a systematic and
Organized body of knowledge on a particular subject.
yeah. So, what can be more systemized and organized knowledge than Krishna consciousness as presented in Srimad Bhagvatam and Bhagavad Gita? You see? But see, their first definition is it's all only about matter, nothing about spirit. But Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 7th chapter, he says, in a very important verse, 7th chapter, 2nd verse, that, and the title of the 2nd chapter is Knowledge of the Absolute. Jnanam teham cha vijnanam idam vaksyam yasesataha yajyadva nehebhyo najgyatavya avasisyate. I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you. So phenomenal means everything you can see with the eye or hear, etc. And numinous means everything you cannot see with the eye or hear, but still it exists. So look up the word numinous, N-U-M-I-N-O-U-S. Numinous.
Luminous. It says spiritual or having strong religious and spiritual quality, indicating or suggesting the presence of a divinity.
Okay, so it means everything spiritual. So everything phenomenal or material that can be seen, and everything spiritual that can either be seen or not seen. Right. So this is real. Krishna consciousness is real knowledge. It's knowledge of everything phenomenal and numinous. And here in the purport, Prabhupada says, complete knowledge includes knowledge of the phenomenal world, the spirit behind it, and the source of both of them. Complete knowledge includes knowledge of the phenomenal world, the spirit behind it, and the source of both of them. So this is complete knowledge, not this incomplete, false knowledge of the scientist, so-called scientists. See how systematic Prabhupada is. The Lord wants to explain the above-mentioned system of knowledge, right? So they're saying that systematic and organized body of knowledge, that's science, right? Well, that's exactly what this is, transcendental knowledge. That is, the complete knowledge includes knowledge of the phenomenal world, the spirit behind it, and the source of both of them. This is transcendental knowledge. The Lord wants to explain the above-mentioned system of knowledge because Arjuna is Krishna's confidential devotee and friend. In the beginning of the 4th chapter, this explanation was given by the Lord, and it is again confirmed here. Complete knowledge can be achieved only by the devotee of the Lord in disciplic succession directly from the Lord. Therefore, one should be intelligent enough to know the source of all knowledge, who is the cause of all causes, and the only object for meditation in all types of yoga practice. When the cause of all causes becomes known, then everything knowable becomes known, and nothing remains unknown. The Vedas, Mundaka Upanishad 1.3 say, Kasmin Bhagavo Vigyate Sarvam Idam Vigyatam Bhavati. That's a translation of when the cause of all causes becomes known, then everything knowable becomes known, and nothing remains unknown. Well, we can see that material knowledge is very piecemeal. It's not complete at all. It doesn't give a real, let's say, description of reality, of the real world. And because of that, people remain unfulfilled. Just like there was an interview of someone who was dying of AIDS, and they asked him, do you regret anything you did in your life? He said, oh no, I had so much sex. It was amazing. So that's his achievement in life. I had so much sex. It was amazing. And where did it get him? It got him AIDS, and he ended up dead. And next life, he can be a monkey or a pigeon. Pigeons can have sex 30, 40, 50 times a day. And monkeys also. So you see how inane and sad and devastating it is to be devoid of Krishna consciousness. And what happens? You just become dissipated, destroy the whole human energy that you've been, or that we have been given for self-realization, and instead of become self-realized, we become self-destructive. So now we see the reason why there are pandemics in this world. It's because most people are wasting their lives, and they engage in activities that subverts their ojas, their life force, and they waste it by engaging in sex life and eating nonsense things and hearing nonsense things all day long, politics. The television is on all day long in many houses in India. They don't turn it off. I went to the house of this one devotee years ago, and he had a big screen television on. So when you walk into the house, any time of the day, the television is on. And some of the family members are sitting there watching it. You come in and they say, oh, how are you doing? While they're watching the television. And then when they're eating, they're watching the television also. Did you see this? Yeah. So this television has become, the thakur of the house in most Indian houses. Most people, and not only in India, and in America also, most people just spend all their time watching television, And what kind of life is that? And most of the people that are on the television, they're all demons. Even in the children's programs, the actors are mostly big-time demons. There's this one person, I forget his name. He was called Mr. Pinky or something like that. I forget. He's a child entertainer, right? And the guy is a complete demon. He's a child molester, right? But he is famous, and he's on television, and he's entertaining kids every day. You see that, Mr. Pinky? Or I forget what his name was, something like that. Are you looking him up? Adi Dev?
I did not see his name yet.
No? Okay. Well, we don't, he's not important anyway. Okay, so anyway, Prabhupada really emphasizes hearing every day. And then he says, advancement of material science without God consciousness is a heavy load on the head of human society, and so one must take heed of this great warning. Great warning is, don't be fooled by all these so-called big scientists and philosophers. All of them are very low-class people. And you can see from the definition of the words, every time I say look something up, it doesn't mention anything about God, right? They've erased Krishna from the whole existence of this planet, you know. So this is what they've done, and this is why there's so many problems in society, whether it's India or the United States. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Are there any questions?
The molester I was looking for was Jimmy Savile.
What?
Jimmy Savile, he did hundreds of people. He hurt hundreds of people.
Who was that?
A guy in, let's see, Britain's late TV presenter, radio host, Jimmy Savile.
He's British?
More than 30 radio.
What?
Jimmy Savile was a British TV guy.
Okay.
He had a whole bunch of them, and it wasn't until like 20 years that he got
SAVO?
SAVIO.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm talking about one guy in America. It's called Mr. Pinky, or I think, yeah. Forget what his name was. But they're all over the world. So they got one in England also, Jimmy Savio. He was a child entertainer? Pinky Lee, yeah, that's it. Pinky Lee?
Someone sent me on the website, someone is listening on the
Oh, someone was listening, to the class. Pinky Lee, look him up. Let's see what it says. What? Okay. Yeah. Comedian? Burlesque.
Comic and host of children's television program. The TV show in early 1960s.
Yes. Yeah, he's another nonsense. He was a nonsense person, but he was educating children, you know, or like entertaining them every day. The kids would be watching him every day. You see, but he himself is a horrible person. Okay, this is what's happened over time. The more the time goes by, the more prominent demons become. And they're even entertainers and educators of children. It's a very nefarious business. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Krishna consciousness is the real science.